Welcome to the Content Podcast, conversations with Silicon Valley's creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates.
Hello, this is Cain.
Today we talk with Cain Ramirez. He's the vice president of Paper Moon Coffee Company. Hey Cain, this is Daniel. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. What about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, actually I have to give a little confession. My computer, right before we got on this call, started to make like sizzling bacon noises from like the inside of it. So I had to pull out a secondary one. What do you think that means?
I'd say if it was food, that'd be a good thing. But considering computers aren't edible, I think you're up the creek, buddy.
Yeah, it didn't seem good. Yeah. Cool. How's your day going? How's things at Paper Moon today?
Oh, so it's actually my day off, and
Oh, nice.
I made the mistake of walking around my neighborhood. I just moved into the FIDI in San Francisco.
Okay.
And I spent 2 hours just wandering around the neighborhood, finding coffee shops, and didn't realize till I got home, it's like, oh, wait, there's hills. Everything hurts.
Wait a minute, though. But I mean, you spent years doing bike messenger and curate, right? So you're hill. What's a hill?
Completely different muscle set when you're walking as opposed to biking.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's
Well,
like,
hey, so I do want to see I mean, I think the first time I must have met you back in like late 2014, 2015-ish time or something like that. Because you were doing Cowgirl Bike Courier. When did you start that? When did you kind of begin that? What year was that?
oh man, I gotta look at one of our stickers. So we opened for business in 2014, and 2013 was planning and getting all the legal paperwork squared away.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think I probably met you the first time right in the beginning because you kind of just showed up and then you were connected with Vegelution and like a lot of different kind of circles. So that was 2013, 2014. And what was the impetus to start a bike courier or messenger service here in San Jose?
Man, it was just, it was myself and my business partner, Amanda, two kids obsessed with bicycles, looking around like at San Francisco, Oakland, at all these bike messenger services. And it was just a question of why doesn't this exist here?
Yeah.
Where it's like very bikeable. There's a lot of urban sprawl. There's a need for it.
Yeah.
So we hit the ground running.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did that for how many years?
I'd say about 5-6 years till my body just gave out.
Yeah.
One of the bikes I was using actually had a broken weld, so every time I pedaled, it would shift a little to the left.
Oh, wow.
And it ended up taking a toll on my knee to the point where I couldn't bike without incredible pain. Wow. I took a year off just to rehabilitate the knee and assure it's like, hey, still got cartilage in there. Just rebuilt the muscle so that can support it without having to like walk around with a cane.
Yeah. Cane with the cane. Yeah,
exactly.
Kind of funny.
That's another business gimmick right there.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I know because you were around and you were doing it in San Jose, but then you kind of morphed and moved up more to San Francisco, didn't you?
Yeah, because what ended up happening is we were pivoting to legal paperwork and process serving, which is super lucrative once you get in. And at that same time, Santa Clara County is like, hey, we're going to move everything to digital.
Oh, yeah.
So there was no longer reason to physically go to the courthouses in San Jose.
Right, yeah.
Versus in San Francisco, you still need to go into the courthouses physically to turn in physical paperwork.
Interesting.
And we're like, okay, most of our clients are in San Francisco, like Oakland, Redwood City anyway, so it made sense for us to migrate north.
Yeah, that's cool. Because when you moved up there, then you kind of just disappeared, and I didn't see Cain around the streets anymore, and I was kind of sad actually.
I became the man behind the scenes, just between recovery and not having to be on the bike as much anymore, just because business had expanded to the point where I need to spend more time in the office. Yeah. It was like, hey, this is a good time to just sit down and figure things out.
Yeah. What was some of the revelations, epiphanies that you had during that time of sitting in the office and staring at paperwork in the ceiling and your belly button? What kind of came out of that?
I didn't get it until I got older, but my grandfather always told me, it's like, son, you don't want to do physical labor for a living. That's no way to live. Me, 20 something, all the energy in the world. It's like, yeah, this is great. I don't know what the hell grandpa's talking about. Come
Yeah.
you hit 30, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. I get it. I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is
It's
hard. Yeah. I had a neighbor who was a tile worker, and his hands were just always just kind of like swollen just because of constantly using his hands in that repetitive motion. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of like getting, work on the computer and getting carpal tunnel syndrome. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. So then you exited the bike courier world,
Mm,
and now you ended up at Paper Moon.
yes.
How did it go from courier to coffee? That's a
So,
good title. That's going to be like your behind the scene music. Cane to cane, courier to coffee.
I'm going to write that down right now and
Yeah, right.
copyright it
You could,
before you do.
right, exactly. Send it in a letter to yourself. Yeah, yeah,
Oh man. So during my basically year hiatus, um, I had gotten in contact with one of our older clients, Wendy Warren, who at the time was the what her title be? The chief executive officer for Chromatic Coffee in Santa Clara.
yeah.
And she's like, hey, there's a lot going on right now. Like, we're having a big staff changeover. The former manager is leaving, new manager is coming in. And she said, I'm thinking about taking this solo and focusing on a nonprofit project called Coffee Housing,
Hmm.
which basically is buying physical housing and then renting it below market rate for coffee professionals so that
Awesome.
they continue to work in Silicon Valley. And I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, that's a humongous undertaking. I wish you best of luck because, like, pivoting a cafe and starting a nonprofit and rebranding, it's like, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, if you're interested, because I know that you're like stepping away from Cowgirl, I'd love to have you on as an advisor. And I was like, okay, what would that entail?
Yeah.
So we negotiated, and basically it was to be in a marketing role, doing a
Yeah.
lot of copy editing for the nonprofit, the rebranding,
Yeah.
picking out the logo, easy stuff. And of course, things snowballed and it picked up quicker than we expected. It's like, okay, now we have to pivot. And now we only have 3 months in which to pivot. It's like, okay, so we're basically creating a business entity from the ground up.
Okay. Yeah.
And that led into Paper Moon Coffee Company, which is the cafe in Santa Clara and San Jose now.
Yeah.
And it's basically the face for Coffee Housing, which is the nonprofit which actually got its nonprofit status, I want to say 2 months ago now.
Okay.
So it's
Awesome.
a certified 501c3.
Yeah.
And Wendy's working on assembling the board of directors for that. And as all this is going on, it's like, hey, it's like, do you want to take a larger role in this? I was like, I could be convinced. And so I moved from advisor to vice president. And essentially, my tasks are day to day operations for the Santa Clara Cafe, as well as the overall branding and growth of the company as a whole.
Yeah. Cool. So then, yeah. So, and then for those who don't know the story, the Paper Moon used to be called Chromatic Cafe. So what's the connection between Chromatic Coffee, the cafes, and now Paper Moon? How does that all come about?
So it's basically the same story that's been heard in professional coffee forever. Is you'll have a mother coffee company, like for example, we'll use Verve in Santa Cruz, in which the company grows, it grows and grows, and then the owners, original founders, get together and be like, hey, we want to go somewhere separate.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's something as big as a buyout, like Stumptown got bought out by Nestle
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just went everywhere. Verve also got bought out by Nestle,
Oh, wow.
but
I didn't know.
during it's Nestle or one of the big coffee companies that isn't Starbucks.
Okay.
They got bought out, and I think it was two of the original founders said, "Hey, this is cool, but we still want to have full control, and we can't have that working under this big conglomerate.
Yeah.
So they went and started Cat and Cloud in Santa Cruz.
Oh, I didn't know those guys were connected
Yep.
with Verb.
Chris
Oh yeah.
Baca, I believe, was one of the
Yeah.
original founders of Verve.
Yeah, that's
So
right. Yeah,
Cat and Cloud,
we did a story on them a while ago too, before the beginning of the lawsuit. Yeah.
yeah.
With Caterpillar. Yeah, okay. So then all right, so then Chromatic was started by Wendy and
So if I recall correctly, it was James and Wendy, who are brother and sister, Yver, who
yeah,
was the head roaster, and a plethora of other people, but those were the three big names.
yeah,
And Wendy's deal was, it's like, I will purchase the cafe and license the name from you, and that will
right,
be like your big storefront. James and Yver have control over the roastery, and that is their operation.
right.
So fast forward about a decade, and it's like, hey, the contract is expiring. I want to do coffee housing. It's like, that's my next big project.
Yeah, yeah,
And the roastery is like, okay, well, we're more interested in expanding our roastery and like getting coffee into more hands.
yeah,
So contract ends. They're like, okay, we're going to go our separate ways. And then March 1st of this year was the official start date of Paper Moon as a brand.
yeah.
And Wendy and I had gotten together. I want to say we started talking in April of last year,
Oh
hit the
wow.
ground
Like a
running in
year.
June.
Yeah,
So basically, we had from June 2019 to March 2020 to
right.
just completely revamp everything.
Yeah. So then you kind of opened up like 2 weeks before COVID and shut the place, right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
so to make matters worse, we decided to throw a latte art throwdown as like part of the big name unveiling, bring in the community sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it was literally the night before the COVID shutdown started.
Oh yeah.
And we're like
Yeah.
biting our nails, like, hey, something's coming. Do we keep the event? Do we not? And we did. And we had a turnout of, I want to say, about 50 people.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the event ends, like, hey, we're getting calls in from like the county that everything just needs to like go black for a while. And
Yeah.
we are like, okay, so that was officially the last coffee community that will be happening for the near future, which is now looking like the last coffee event community for a very
Yeah.
long time.
For 2020. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy. So then, so that's interesting. I really didn't know that much about the housing aspect of it. So give me a little bit of, like the plans. How's that going so far? So you guys actually purchased a property yet, or and how
So
much are you involved in that part of it? Are you? I'm gonna ask you 10 questions at once,
go for it.
and then and then are you just more really now focusing on the cafes?
yeah, so my focus is on the cafe.
Okay.
I was given the opportunity to help with coffee housing, but then I was like, you know, I learned a long time ago chasing after two rabbits, you don't even catch one.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of person who, when I work, is like, I will just zone out for 3, 4 hours at a time to hyper focus on one thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would much rather be hyper focusing on the cafe and the brand than trying to divert my energy into coffee housing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So then all those other questions will throw them out the window because I want to ask you this instead. So then what's your then since you're in charge of the marketing and the daily flow of it, what is your kind of like elevator speech for Paper Moon Coffee?
Elevator speech, man, I have not thought about that in
I
God,
know it's so Silicon
5 years.
Valley.
Oh man.
Right when you were doing a Cowgirl Courier, you probably had to do that all the time, right? Do
Oh
pitches, do
man. Cowgirl, Veggielution, like everything. We had an elevator speech.
yeah, yeah,
Um, God, I've never really needed one for Paper Moon because in reality, coffee sells itself.
yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
needs coffee.
yeah.
And our goal is simply to be the best coffee.
That's a good goal. Be the best.
You ever read Ender's Game?
No, what is that?
Oh man, so it's a sci-fi novel, and it's about basically kids going to war against the alien enemy in space. And the
Cool.
main character is genius child, gets recruited into the army with all the other genius children. And upon like hopping in the shuttle to go to the spacecraft, he gets the crap beaten out of him by his classmates because they
Nice.
see he's the smartest kid in the room and therefore he's a threat.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
is the army now, so it's every man for himself.
Yeah.
So he goes crying to the commander who recruited him, who's like baby walking him through the whole thing. It's like, why would you do that? It's like, I saw the cameras. You're watching me the entire time. How could you just leave me there? It's like, why didn't you step in and do something? And the commander just gives him to the straight. It's like, you know what? Because you have to learn to fend for yourself. This is
Yeah.
the real world now. And the reality is, you need to beat these guys. And the only way you can beat them is you need to be so good at what you do that they can't ignore you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I take into Paper Moon every day. It's like, hey, cards are against us because everyone and their mother has their own cafe roastery now.
Yeah.
But we just need to be so good that we can't be ignored.
Yeah. That's awesome. Did you have that same kind of philosophy with Cowgirl
Oh,
or
yeah.
Courier?
It
So that's
was,
kind of your that story, that book kind of has always kind of left a mark on you, would you say?
yeah, which is funny because I actually read that book when I was doing deliveries for Chromatic Cafe under Cowgirl. I would
Yeah.
get in at like 6, 5 a.m. and I would have an hour to kill until the cafe opens, and none of my other clients are going to open up till like 9 or 10. So I would usually spend an hour or two just reading in that cafe, and Ender's Game was one of the books that I read during that time.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. No, it's like coming together.
Yep.
Were you when you growing up? Were you kind of like a sci-fi reader or something like that, or enthusiast?
Oh man, I was just anything that was not of this world. I was totally in for like
Yeah.
anything bigger than life,
Yeah.
superheroes, post-apocalyptic, whole nine
Yeah.
yards.
What was some of your favorite? Like, what was your main kind of like book or comic or something like that,
Ooh, book or comic?
or even superhero?
Truth be told, it's like when I really started getting into reading, it was a lot of Steinbeck
Oh, cool. Love him. Yeah.
because it's very grounded reading. Like it exists on this plane, but
Yeah.
then just the adventures and the mishaps he puts his characters into are the sort of things that just push enough of fantasy where it's like you're enticed, but you still believe it. There's
Yeah.
no second guessing, like, oh, this man just pulled a hammer out of his pocket. It's like, no, it's a bunch of guys who got really drunk and really unlucky, and they somehow pull the solution out of their rears.
Yeah. Yeah, it is real. It's real. It's like real authentic. And I love it, just because it's so California in our area too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Even the description that he does of, I forget which, a couple short stories, and the description of the hills and the sky and the trees. It's like, yeah, this is my home. So it's kind of fun. Did
Yeah.
you grow up around here? Are you from San Jose, or
Yeah.
where did you grow up?
Grew
Yeah.
up in Santa Cruz, right there on the beach.
Cool. Like literally on the beach? Were you like,
Yeah, my mother was going to UC Santa Cruz when she had
oh,
me.
cool. Yeah.
So she would take me to classes, and we lived between family housing and like little apartments moving back and forth.
Yeah. Did you get into the surf scene and skate scene and stuff too, or?
Man, I never had the money to get into that.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm always telling people, it's like, oh, you must have surfed all the time. It's like I always dreamed of being able to like rent a wetsuit and a board, but I could never
Yeah.
afford it. So I just
Yeah.
taught myself like how to body surf and swim out in the ocean.
Yeah. Do you find the ocean or the beach like a place you would go to, like if you wanted to refresh or to think, is it kind of like that kind of a place for you, or is it more of
Yeah.
childhood bad memories?
It's just like here in San Francisco, I'm part of the South End Rowing Club, and they allow you to swim in the aquatic park.
Oh, cool.
And it's just one of the few places I can go and just totally just turn my brain off. It's like
Yeah.
there's nothing to think about when it's just you in the water. It's just like, okay, where am I going? How long can I stay out here before hypothermia sets in?
Yeah, like since I've known you, I mean, no, especially, being a founder and the CEO of your own company, riding the bike, doing the books, the whole gamut. And then even what I see with you with Paper Moon is like I mean, you're a very hard worker. What do you what do you do to kind of like for your own personal kind of like life and soul and health, would you say?
So,
Not enough, right? Like all of us, like all
yeah,
of us. Yeah. Yeah.
I was, talking to my ex who has since become a licensed therapist about this, what, like a
Oh,
month ago, and I was just like, "Yeah, I finally made it." It's like, I don't have to worry about money, I love my job, it's like, I just work all the time, and she
yeah.
asks us like, "So, what do you do aside from work that makes you happy?" And I sat there for about 10 minutes and thought about it, I was like, "I can't think of anything." It's like,
Yeah.
there are plenty of things that I do to, like, relax, such as read or play music, but
Yeah.
I'm happiest when I'm actively working on something.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like a shark some days, like, I just need to be doing something that's
Always moving.
yeah, it's like, "Oh, the radiator valve's busted." It's like, "Oh, I can fix that." Before I know, like, 2 hours are gone, it's like, "Oh, there goes my whole day," but it keeps me alive and it keeps me refreshed.
Like for me, like I'm like I was even talking to Trami from Chopstick Alley, and she was saying like she's like a rabbit, versus the hare versus the turtle and all that kind of stuff. I'm the same way. Like I'll run, 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 do a bunch of stuff, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm done. And then I literally will not do anything. Like I'll watch some soccer, maybe I'll read a little bit, but it's like I'm not doing anything. Do you know what I mean? And then I'll go,
Mm.
go, go. Is that how you kind of handle, it, or more of you're just kind of always kind of moving, or what would you kind of
Oh, so
identify? What animal are you?
so
Not to get
it's funny 'cause, every time this animal thing comes up, I think to what my brother said, because little brother, he thinks the world of me, and I don't let him on to the fact that I have obvious glaring flaws. And, what was it the other day? He's just like, "Yeah, you've always been like the lion and just things come onto you and everything works out." It's like, "No, no, Eric. I'm like the real life lion. I just lay in the grass and wait for food to come to me. I am lazy as hell."
Well, that's what I was telling somebody too, is I was like, is like in the reality is like I'm actually a lazy person. I'm always thinking of what's the quickest way to get this done and do,
Mhm.
still do it well, but what's the fastest way to get it done so that I can maximize my time of actually just looking at the blue sky and enjoying the wind blowing across my face?
Yeah, Greg LeMond said it best after, winning the Tour de France. First American to win it. And it's just like, "Greg, how did you do it? First American to win Tour de France." And he just looks at the camera and says, "It never gets any easier. You just go faster."
Yeah. So, yeah. So the kind of the chapter of the bike culture is you're kind of over that now. So are you throwing yourself even more than into the coffee culture kind of
Yeah,
scene?
but it's interesting because with age comes wisdom, and now more than ever, I'm realizing it's like for people to move forward, for the scene to grow to where it wants to be, we need more teachers and we need more people who are willing to open doors for others.
Yeah.
So it's like that's been my main focus in coffee is like, hey, I do have all these wonderful resources to these things that make my life a lot easier, and it's time that I start sharing them with others so that they have the
Yeah.
same opportunities.
That's cool. So are you talking specifically more kind of like, especially being, CEO and a founder and now you're vice president, are you talking more of kind of like management, business oversight skills? Or are you talking about barista, actually skills and like how to make a whatever, I don't know, a mojito. No, that's not a coffee thing.
I could go for a mojito right now, not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
right, exactly.
Um,
Let me text you one.
yeah,
So which aspect are you thinking of?
so it's funny because when I first came into coffee, like Chromatic, without a doubt, has this reputation for being the best coffee in the Bay Area.
Mhm.
So it's like staring down that beast. It's like, oh, if I walk into this cafe knowing as little as I do now, I'm going to get eaten alive. Doesn't matter what my title is, those
Yeah,
baristas are ruthless. They will not hesitate nor quarter, just take me out.
yeah,
So first thing I did is started going to coffee classes at the Crown Royale in Oakland, which is a coffee lab, and
cool, yeah.
just hit the basics. I was like, all right, So, what is this coffee flavor wheel everyone talks about? It's like, what language are you using? What does
Yeah.
it mean to be specialty graded coffee?
Yeah.
And so, for the first year, it's just alternating between that and the marketing, trying to grow my coffee knowledge so that when I stepped in as vice president, I was like, hey, it's clear to me that everyone is very skilled in coffee, but there are holes in everyone's education, including mine, that
Yeah.
need to be filled out. So it's
Yeah.
like, how do we put our heads together and fill out one another's education?
Yeah.
And
That's
so
cool.
it's meant everything from promoting people up, just being like, hey, I see you do a really good job on training people how to like make espresso or do latte art. How would you like to be a dedicated trainer? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I've noticed you're really into coffee quality tasting notes. How would you feel about roasting?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Cool.
and then paying for their classes through the company or out of pocket just so that they have the opportunity. Because once again, when we were bike messengers, it's like money's hard to come by. And it's like for someone at an executive level, a $50 class is like, okay, whatever, pull out of my pocket. That's
Yeah.
not a reality for everyone else.
Yeah.
So whenever these situations are presented, it's like, oh, but I don't have the money or the time. It's like, I can always make more money. It's like, this knowledge will be invaluable no matter where you go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
cool.
opening those doors has been the most important thing.
Yeah. That's cool. What would you say? Like, what lessons did you learn from doing Cowgirl Courier that you've brought into being a vice president at Paper Moon?
Always get it in writing.
That's a good one.
Anything and everything, always get it in writing.
Yeah, yeah. What's the story behind that? What's the real practical things
Oof.
that happened?
So I love telling this story to like my assistant managers and my shift leads because with Cowgirl, we worked with a lot of legal clients.
Yeah.
And the paralegals are super nice. They're super understanding. It's like they will move heaven and earth for you. The lawyers, on the other hand, it's like, hey, this paperwork need to be turned in 20 minutes ago. It's like, yeah, but the courthouse closes in 10 minutes. Like, I'm aware it needs to be filed today.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
ruthless, cutthroat, no exceptions.
Yeah.
Like walking on eggshells the entire time and just this brooding force over you. And some days it's like, hey, why wasn't this filed on XY day? It has the wrong stamp date. It's like, well, as you can see right here in this receipt, I turned it in at 4:59 at the courthouse. So if it's misstamped, it's not my fault because I made the deadline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the difference between keeping a client and losing a client is having that in writing.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you say that you're a first generation Chicanx
Mm.
on your look at your Instagram. And so what's are your was your are you were your parents here from Mexico or South America or something like that, or what's your kind of
Yeah.
like background?
Oh man, so that's been like convoluted since the day I was born. So I guess the best way to start it is the story of the actual day I was born is my mother, who is second generation here. Her parents were both born in California. She
Hmm.
was born and raised in San Jose. My father came from one of the indigenous territories over the border seeking a better life.
Yeah.
So it's at the hospital, I think it was Dominican in Santa Cruz, right off the highway.
Hmm.
It's my mother, my father, my mother's mother, and my mother's grandmother.
Hmm.
And they're all there in the room waiting for me to come out. I pop out, just a very dark child with a lot of black hair. And the nurses are swooning over. It's like, oh my God, this child has so much hair. And my great grandmother is screaming in Spanish to the point that my grandmother has to take her out of the birthing room. So mom's freaking out. Dad's trying to keep her calm. Grandma comes back and it's like, Mom, what's wrong with my baby? It's like, what's going on? It's like, oh no, your grandmother, she's just crazy. It's like, no, I heard her say pobrecita, which means poor little thing. It's like,
Yeah.
what is wrong with my child?
Huh.
And
Yeah.
my grandmother, with just the heaviest sigh, she said, that poor little thing is going to have it so hard because he was born dark.
Oh, Yeah.
My mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother are all very light skinned Mexicans.
Yeah.
My father, who's indigenous, is very dark with just that tinge of red that you
Hmm.
only see within the indigenous culture, which got passed on to me.
Yeah.
So for me, the joke was growing up, we can never take Cain to Mexico because either he goes back to where his father comes from and he's not accepted because he's not authentic enough, or he goes
Yeah.
back to where we come from and he's too dark.
Wow. Yeah. Have you then, through your life, have you kind of felt that and sensed that because having darker skin, do you feel that you have been, you know, a victim or a receiver, I don't know what you call it, of racism and judgment because of that?
Oh God, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like for people who aren't Mexican or indigenous, they take one look at me and they're like, "Oh, you know, he must be like Hawaiian or something," because it's not. I don't have a typical shade of what people would consider a standard Mexican or the same face shape.
Yeah.
It's like
And you're
much
pretty large, I mean tall, right?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Just like this commanding presence, it doesn't line up.
Yeah.
So then it's like, and I found more as I get older with my features becoming more pronounced that if I go to places where indigenous Mexicans gather or happen to be, they immediately pull me in because they're like, we are so few and far between now.
Yeah.
It's like, my goodness. And it's like, you poor child. It's like, we know. It's like, come sit with us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to Mexico once and they ate me alive.
Do you speak
Just
Spanish? How much
no, I
Spanish?
speak no Spanish, so that didn't help my cause either.
Yeah,
It's
right.
just
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're definitely not one of us, and you don't even speak the language. It's like, what the hell are you doing here? And it's like, hey, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of had the interesting because, being half white, half Mexican, and pretty light skinned, Mexicans with, history from Spain and everything, right? Being
Mhm,
in certain circles where people would make comments about, and like little sly things about Mexicans and not realize that I'm Mexican, right?
mhm.
So, I mean, I'm half breed or whatever, quarter breed. But you know what I mean? Just it's kind of interesting, when people think they're safe, the things that they might say that they wouldn't say if they knew, right?
Mhm.
But yeah. So then this in this current time of everything that's going on, like politically, with people of color, with immigration, with two presidential candidates. What's your kind of like mood, thoughts, ideas based around those kind of current cultural things?
It's scary out there. Not gonna lie. I think back to all of the people of color who have been killed just for existing.
Yeah,
Like, it's gotten to the point where I can't even remember the names now because there's a new one every week.
yeah,
It's like I remember when, oh God, I feel so bad. I can't remember his name. The kid walking through a park in San Francisco wearing a 49ers jacket and eating a burrito
yeah,
and was just shot by a cop because he was perceived as a threat.
yeah. They thought the burrito was a gun or a weapon or
Yeah.
something
And I
like
was
that.
like, that's me, just walking around in jacket, eating my burrito. It's like any given time, I could be executed for no reason.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's pretty scary. I mean, I'm excited to see that there's more awareness going on, and yet at the same time, I'm nervous and concerned that will there be how much change is really possible or will happen,
Hmm.
because it seems like it's polarizing, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, for lack of a better term, it feels like the second coming of the civil rights movement. It is
Yeah,
the hot topic on everyone's mind and tongue. And what it comes down to is either you're completely horrified by it or you are it. It's
yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're either asking, how could this possibly happen? Or you're just like, yeah, this has been going on for like decades and you're just finally waking up.
Yeah, yeah, which I think that's the hardest pill, I think, for people to swallow, is that because they haven't seen it, and they haven't experienced it, they don't think it exists, right? And I think that
Exactly.
that's the largest, biggest hurdle as a society that I think we have to get over right now.
Which is funny because a trend I've noticed, especially in the coffee industry right now, is the rejection of the idea of a hero.
Huh, what do you
There,
mean? What do you mean?
so there are a lot of people doing good work in
Yeah.
coffee and promoting diversity and equity, and I feel like 9 times out of 10, they always say the same thing. It's like, "Hey, don't put me on a pedestal. Don't
Oh
make a
yeah.
hero out of me because I'm not perfect."
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
of course, the crowd just chimes in. It's like, "Well, of course not. We'd never put you on a pedestal. It's like, we won't make you a hero, but we still admire you and the work you're doing." And then me here on the sidelines, having been doing like social advocacy for the past 20 years now, it's just like, you're missing the point. It's like, you need heroes,
Yeah.
you need someone to aspire to. At the same time, you need to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
It's not just a free ticket if you're a hero. It's like, hey, if you said that you're going to clean up crime and throw out Congress, it's like, well, you better do it
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's like talk is cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you need action to back it up, and it's something I've always strived for in my own work. Is like I've always been in an environment, and I'm sure you're the same way. Executive level people who talk the talk, and they
Yeah.
love to talk. But when it comes time to do the actual work, nobody steps up.
Yeah.
And then that's when the true leaders define themselves. So like, hey, it could be anything from this man went to college and got a law degree so he could fight the big bads, or it could be something as simple as these gentlemen got together and started free pancake breakfast for the kids in their neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Hey, you said that you've been doing advocacy or activism or something like that for 20 years. What's your stream of work that you move in?
Ooh, it was, for lack of a better word, getting people together to mobilize for a common cause.
Hmm.
Like, I think the base root of it must have been, I want to say, high school, college,
Okay.
where I was a jazz musician and I
Oh,
played electric and upright bass.
cool.
And of course, high school, college, everyone wants to start a band.
Yeah.
I was one of the few people who put in the work to actually get the bands together and like find gigs for us.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
it's like in high school, it's pretty easy to get a gig. You'd have like a battle of the bands or something, or like, what was it, school pride week, the opportunities to
Oh yeah.
present
Talent
themselves.
show. Yeah.
Exactly. As college came around, I started learning classical like opera stylings for voice, and then it became a game of, okay, you need to promote yourself to get this gig, and then gigs would pop up where it's like, hey, I need a quartet for this funeral. You need to do this passage from the Requiem. So I would have to
Yeah.
find three other singers of three other voice types, sort everything out, and it segued into politics when, God, how many years ago was this now? The March 4th movement, I want to say 2011,
Hmm.
2010,
Okay.
when there was a call to shut down all the UC and state schools in California because they were increasing the fees and cutting the classes.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it doesn't take account to figure out that this is a dirty deal. And it's like that culminated with helping to lead the march in San Francisco on March 4th. And it ended right about the same time the Oscar Grant situation appeared.
Okay.
Because then everybody was like, education's no longer important. We have to stand up for what's right and support Oscar Grant. I was like, hey, I understand that, but I signed on for education.
Hmm.
And then soon I found everyone else that hopped on Oscar Grant. I was like, okay, well, guess I'm going back to square one. Went back to music school.
Yeah. So then you were saying, so your kind of advocacy was in the thing for education and kind of like music. Is that kind
Hmm.
of like the, and then do you still play the bass and,
Oh man, so I don't have a bass anymore. I do have a guitar, and I've been trying to reteach myself like all the jazz standards.
oh, wow, cool.
Just because when quarantine hit, it's like, man, I need something to get out of my head because I can't
Yeah.
go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. What's
So,
one of your favorite jazz standards?
I could totally pull a gimmick right now, and I think I'm going to.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
it's only a paper moon.
Okay. Okay. Is that in some, was some of the naming from that, or what's the reasoning
Oh
behind
my
paper moon?
god. So we had a name in mind. I can't even remember it now. But we found out 3 days before we were going to announce it that it was trademarked by Starbucks.
Oh my gosh, 3 days before too. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All
So
right. All right. All right.
me, the then manager of the cafe, and the owner just 72 hours throwing spaghetti against the wall, hoping something would stick. And
Yeah.
the owner was like, "Oh, I watched this song or watched this movie way back called Paper Moon, and it's about uh, basically a swindler and his kid trying to get by." And I was like, that's really cute. I can work with that. Hell yes. There's a jazz standard align with it. Okay, we're in business.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
It is funny, like, you know what I mean? Like the time that people spend on names and all that kind of stuff, and even like in branding and marketing, I always tell people, it's like, you know what? It's like it doesn't make any difference in some ways because the quality of the product is what's going to make the name, not the name, right? Because you
Yep.
can have the best name out there, like even like Starbucks and even like Verve. I mean, like they're so random. And that I heard the guy actually of Mailchimp talking about it, and he was like, "Yeah, if we were doing it again, we wouldn't have called ourselves Mailchimp."
Man, I like MailChimp though.
I know, but I think that's the thing is like the real work comes in producing the product. So like Paper Moon, it could be as random as 3 days in a movie and a song, right?
Mm,
But it's going to be the quality of the coffee and the service, and that makes you have an emotional attachment to Paper Moon.
yep.
Then yeah. Cool. Hey, so for you, let's close out with this. What is kind of like what is Cain Ramirez's mission statement? When you get up in the morning, this is what drives you when you
Oh,
when you think about it. When you're clear.
so once again, my ex, the therapist, who knows me all too well, said it best when she was watching, what was it, Luke Cage. She texted me, this was years ago. It's just like, hey, watching Luke Cage, thinking of you. I was like, oh, cool. I'm associated with this incredibly handsome buff dude. I like that. She's like, no, it's more the character of the guy. It's like, oh, protecting the innocent. I like that too. It's like, no, that exhausted attitude of no one else is going to do the work. So it's time that I roll up my sleeves and get to work.
Okay.
That is the mission. No
Yeah.
one else
Okay.
is going to do the work that needs to be done. So here I am.
Yeah. So you're gonna do it. Would you say that is that because you kind of have like a heart of service, or is it more of like, well, is it tenaciousness? Like this has got to get done. What would you say? What's like the motivation behind that?
It comes from my grandfather. He was a trucker all his life, and pulling like 80 hours on the road was a regular week for him.
Hmm.
And there were some days where he'd like wake up at 3 and he'd come home at 3, take off his work boots, he'd lay down in his favorite chair to take a nap. And the boss would call and it's like, Eustace, I need a man to do this emergency run. Are you available? And he would put his boots back on because it's what he had to do to take care of his 5 kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the kids were always like, Dad, please don't go. Tell Mr. Farrett just this once. Do you stay?
Yeah.
And every time he'd look him right in the eye and said, son, daughter, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Someone's in need. He has the capacity, and it allows him a better life for his family.
Yeah.
That's all he needed to do to get back up.
Cool.
So
All
it's
right.
like seeing that. It's like, yeah, no matter how hard I'm working, it's not even half of what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good perspective. Yeah. Well, actually, now I know who to call when I need help.
I'm very good at
So everybody out there in the podcast world, Kane's phone number is, if you're moving.
I do excel at lifting heavy things. What can I say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Well, awesome. So then when let's actually I want to touch on the coffee housing. When like that's a big uphill kind of it's an awesome idea. Has What's the progress that's been going on that? And when is when's the first house opening up, or is it already opened, or how do I apply to live there?
So first, you'd have to get a job in coffee, which I know a guy. We could work something out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we've already received an offer to purchase someone's house.
Yeah, cool.
It's now a matter of financing.
Hmm.
So we're in the midst of pursuing like large corporate donors because housing is not in the business of nickels and dimes,
Yeah,
but they're pursuing like leads with Google and Apple
yeah,
to get, I think the goal is $1 million in the bank
yeah,
in order to essentially take out a loan and
yeah,
purchase this housing.
yeah. Cool. Like, how big would this house be? Like, how many rooms? And are you thinking in terms of different models? Like, some would be boarding rooms, some would be more apartments, or is that the whole gamut? Or
So the original thought was buying like apartment complexes
okay,
to
yeah,
have like a centralized area, but this house, I think it's like one of those larger boarding houses in Negley Park.
okay, yeah, cool,
So it's like you'd be able to house 12 people.
yeah,
And it's like that's a tremendous start, no matter how you cut it.
yeah. So I have to ask this question
Mm.
because I've heard you can't specifically have any kind of housing. I guess if you're a nonprofit, maybe you can, but for a certain segment of the population, for instance, like the Art Arc was
Mhm.
intentionally kind of supposed to be apartments for artists, but legally you can't discriminate against non-artist people, right?
Yes.
So how can you have housing just for baristas?
So that's the interesting point because the first time we applied for nonprofit status, that was the big holdup. It's like, hey, how do we know you're not just going to pick your coffee people?
Yeah, it could be company housing like back in the early kind of in like slaves days in some ways. Yeah.
Industrial era, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, because it isn't barista specific. It is anyone and everyone working in coffee. So that's everything from the baristas to the roasters to the people who do the design work for like the bags, the people who program the websites. It's like coffee itself, like every other industry, has so many things that lead to selling the coffee.
Yeah.
And our focus is just on this industry because by far and away, um, rate of pay for those working in coffee is nothing compared to say those working in tech.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's like this entire industry as a whole, everyone encompassed umbrella underneath it would benefit from this support,
Yeah.
as opposed to just like a very niche, the person who steams your milk and pulls your espresso shots.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you were able to get status for that or
Yep.
approval? Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I mean,
Fi-
I think it'd be great for people to do this for all kinds of industries, right? From teaching to even restaurant workers, right? I mean, that's
Yep.
in janitorial. I mean, like I mean, the big issue is just housing in general, right?
Yeah.
So I applaud you guys for, focusing on this industry. You know, it'll be a true coffee house, right?
Well, as Grandpa used to say, son, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
It's like if you
cool.
have the means, why wouldn't you use it to help others?
Yeah, your abuelo sounds like a cool guy.
Oh, they broke the mold on him, let me tell you.
What was his name? Because you mentioned his name in passing. I didn't get it. It was really unique.
Is Eustace.
Eustace. Okay.
Eustacio.
Justice. Right.
Yeah,
I
he's
guess.
whew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that man. He was born right in the middle of the Great Depression. Like
Oh yeah.
his mother came over with him in the womb, He was born here and was the first American born of his family,
Yeah. Cool.
and just like he definitely grew up in times of famine, and he never took anything for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting those people who had to experience of not having anything and working hard, how much they value and they work. I remember even, like my grandparents, they nothing would go to waste. They would, you know what I mean, and they would work hard. They would darn their own socks, the whole kind of
Yep.
thing, make their own clothes. But they worked, and then they, had money. They became, middle to upper middle class. But still, there was this thing: is no, no, you don't throw that away. We're going to make use of it.
So my
Yeah,
grandmother is currently thriving in this situation because, like my grandfather, born raised same time era, and her garage has always been filled with like canned food and frozen
yeah,
meats and whatnot.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's like we try to bring her groceries every week. It's like, oh no, I'm fine, I'm set. I'm just like, damn it, all these years, we gave you so much crap for hoarding all this stuff, and here you are, sitting pretty.
Yeah, she's like ready for the apocalypse and stuff like that,
It's
and
like,
yeah,
we have room if you need a place to stay. It's like, Grandma, you're like the top percentile of people that we need to protect right now, please.
yeah, yeah. How funny. Yeah, that's cool. Did you grow up with your grandmother and grandfather, or I mean,
Yeah.
or just kind of visiting them, or did you actually like live with them and stuff?
We spent some time living with them, and it was always that we were never far away from the house because it was like the HQ for all the family. They
Yeah.
have a little walnut orchard in San Martin.
Oh, awesome.
It's still there, and it's still like the hub, especially for grandmother's generation.
Yeah,
Like if something goes down, or if like somebody's getting married, it's like that's the place you gather to share the good news.
yeah. That's fun.
And
I
it's
love that kind of stuff.
it's funny because like we have cell phones and emails, but my uncle will call, be like, "Hey, you around? Yeah, what's going on? I'll be by in about 15 minutes." And then pulls in, then tells the news, and it's like, you
Yeah.
you can just say over the phone,
Yeah. Or Zoom.
yeah, something.
Yeah. That's kind of funny. Well, my kind of thing, right, is like if it's going to be more than one sentence, it shouldn't be a text. If it's going to be more than 5 minutes, it shouldn't be a phone call. Yeah.
uh,
But anyway, cool, man. Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your life, your history, your work, and everything like that. And I'm super excited what's going on with Paper Moon, and excited for Shelter in Place to end. And I guess that's the thing is like are you guys opening up next week to actually have indoor seating, or what's the deal?
so that's actually on our agenda for our executive meeting tomorrow because we just got wind. It's like, hey, we're moving up to level orange. It's like, okay, what does
Yeah,
that mean for us?
yeah,
Because we
yeah,
just expanded our outdoor seating to compensate for the lack of indoor seating.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, what would we need to do to make indoor seating possible? Because even then, it's like 25% of 40
yeah,
people is like 10 people. It's
yeah.
like, do you really want to have 10 people being mad dogged while the others are waiting outside?
Yeah, yeah. But it's great around here. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like we have such good weather. Even when it's wintertime, you'll be able to sit outside.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
still think yeah,
We
yeah,
set up three extra benches and three extra tables and just sprawled them out, and people flocked to them like none other.
yeah.
Like,
I have to
first,
go by because I know last time I was over there, you were talking about the landlord was kind of like giving a little bit of bad vibes about putting some seats out there. So we'll have to come check it out.
yeah.
That all got resolved, I guess, or you guys just did it?
Uh, we forced their hand a bit.
Yeah,
City granted us a permit, and we just
yeah,
took the permit to the landlord. It's like, hey, city says it's fine.
yeah.
Technically, the better we do in business, the bigger cut you take. So I don't see what the problem is here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, why would a landlord want his places to go out of business? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, his argument was, oh, you're taking away parking. It's like, we have like this humongous parking lot. Just
Yeah,
we just
it's
want three
crazy.
spaces out of like 250. Come now.
I know that parking lot is so large. Yeah. Anyway, well, cool. Well, congratulations on everything that you're doing, and good luck figuring out the county codes for for
Yeah,
what can happen, and yeah, and I'll be singing you in there soon, I'm sure.
looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks, man. We'll talk to you later.
Take it easy.
Bye. To find out more about Paper Moon, follow them on Instagram at Paper Moon Coffee Co. and check out their website at papermoon.cafe. Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creatives. This episode's music is Time Alone by Mild Monk. Follow him on Spotify and also on his Instagram at Mild Monk Music.